about to join Don Neuen, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio, and Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience, for a weekly situation report, or SITREP. 18 hours a day, Denise Simon lives her life as an Intel Analyst. 18 hours a day, Don Neuen lives his life in the world of rock and roll. 1 hour each day, Neuen receives a daily SITREP from Simon. Welcome to the Drive Time Situation Report. Fasten your seatbelt. You're now in Don Neuen's car, and he is calling in for his SITREP.
Smello.
Denise Simon.
This is going to be rant night. This is going to be...
Well, let me be the pleasant voice for all of our beloved listeners. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's Drive Time Sit Rep with what appears to be one pissed off Denise Simon and your old buddy Don. So, Denise.
What?
Ooh, see what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen? She must not have been pleased with the Wimbledon finals this weekend. All right, before we get into anything, Denise, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's Drive Time Sit Rep. Unlike any other radio show that you'll listen to, technically, this is about as basic as it gets. I'm in my car driving home from a long day at work, talking to Denise Simon on my cell phone, and that's basically what this radio show is all about. This is a situation report. Because I've been working all day in the world of rock and roll, I'm counting on the fact that Denise Simon has been working all day in the world of sifting through intelligence, reading articles, reading indictments from Epstein, finding out what's going on, so that I can appear by the end of this conversation to be a whole lot more intelligent than I actually am, because she's going to bring me up to speed. Now, we timestamp this show every week so that you know when this conversation takes place. And we do that because Denise is oftentimes way ahead of the curve on what we're talking about. For example, this weekend, when she and Donna and Tom Del Beccaro were pinging incessantly back and forth in text messages about Epstein being arrested, you know, she wrote about this, I think, last week sometime. Not to mention the fact that she's been talking about the Lolita Express and this Epstein character for years, and the trafficking of human beings that he's been doing. So at any rate, Denise, let's timestamp it and, probably, timestamp it, and then I'm going to hit you with my first question about Epstein.
It's 8:54 p.m. Eastern on the 8th day of July in the year of our Lord 2019.
Excellent. You do that so well. Merry Christmas to you, Denise. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
All right. Now, this weekend, when you and Donna and Del Beccaro were feverishly texting back and forth, the first thing that ran through my mind is, Southern District of New York, this is going to be a Trump hit. It's an attempted hit on Trump. Then I think I woke up Sunday morning, maybe it was Saturday morning, to the Deutsche Bank, the investigations with regard to Deutsche Bank. And then I'm like, all right, this all is definitely a political hit on Trump. They're going to try to dig up all kinds of stuff on him. Please tell me I'm wrong with this.
They're not related. Deutsche Bank has been it's kind of like HSBC. They're a cheesy bank, and they've been a cheesy bank. They are kind of the ones that will take the loans that nobody else across the world wants. And they operate very much like the Swiss banks do. They don't tell anybody anything, and they bury this and they hide that. So they've been in trouble for really a lot of years. but they're really not related in this particular situation.
And so this is not a hit by New York prosecutors trying to drag Trump down.
No.
Okay,
look,
good.
Here's the deal. Trump knew Epstein, and Epstein knew Trump. That's beyond argument. All right. But
Correct.
Trump has not really interacted, from all indications, with Epstein since this whole thing came down in 2005 to 2008, whenever this whole thing started. In fact, there appears to be some evidence that Trump picked up the phone and called whomever and worked to cooperate. Trump made the statement. He knew Epstein's reputation for liking young, beautiful girls, of which Trump said, so did I. But young doesn't necessarily mean minors.
Yeah,
so,
I don't see Trump going after anybody that's got braces on.
So here's where we really are. This is today the media was necessarily trying to not really connect, but put Trump's name into the discussion because his labor secretary is Alexander Acosta. Alexander Acosta was one of many lawyers hired by Epstein. He also had Alan Dershowitz. He also had Ken Starr. I mean, he had some top-rated lawyers, but he could well afford it because this guy is worth billions. He used to own a hedge fund, and we don't really know what he's worth, but he's got houses really all over the world. He has 2 airplanes. So he was cut a deal that was by Alexander Acosta, who at the time was the Attorney General for whatever federal district of Miami. I don't know what they call it. The Miami district, I guess. Now, when it comes to the Southern District of New York, the deputy Attorney General that brought this case today and did, well, I shouldn't say today, but gave the press conference today out of the Southern District of New York is actually was suggested by Jeff Sessions and approved by Donald Trump. He is a very good, well-respected lawyer. He does, in fact, I think he's on the right side of this, to be honest with you. Senator Ben Sasse has been very much into this, at least since last year, because and I've asked Tom Del Beccaro this question in a text, and he hasn't responded yet, but that doesn't mean that he won't. The plea deal that Alexander Acosta did on behalf, and of the other lawyers, but certainly Alexander Acosta did for Epstein, was a very sweetheart deal, but it was in violation of what is called the Crime Victims' Rights Act, because there were many girls. Many girls. Yesterday I saw as many as 60. Now I'm seeing as many as well into the couple of hundreds. Anyway, having said that, this deal was a state charge that he got the plea deal on. It was not a federal charge. And apparently, I cannot find the plea deal, the original plea deal. I can't find it. It must still be sealed. I looked for it for about 3 hours today. But apparently, there is a paragraph in this plea deal which could actually work in Trump's favor and Alexander Acosta's favor, because there apparently is a paragraph in this plea deal that says, hey, this is a state charge. If any other state wants to bring respective charge, or the federal government wants to, this plea deal doesn't prohibit that from happening. So,
okay.
Now, Epstein was in fact given a very light sentence. There's no dispute in that. In fact, when he was in prison, interestingly enough, it was like a work release. He got to leave every morning.
It looked a lot like about half of what Dinesh D'Souza had, or twice as much as Dinesh D'Souza's sentencing. It reminded me of that.
Well, he got to leave every day, go to work, wherever that was. Maybe he went to his Miami mansion, I don't know. And then he went back to jail every night. Now, there's so many moving pieces to all of this, but
well, hold on a second. Hold on. The reason I brought up that analogy to D'Souza is that's exactly what D'Souza did for like 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
He had to report back every night, and then he could go do his thing during the day.
Right.
Now, D'Souza was popped by the Obama administration for a bad decision that D'Souza made with regard to a campaign contribution. My point in bringing this whole thing up is you and I will most certainly agree that Dinesh D'Souza's punishment did not fit the crime, and it was the first time in history that that type of crime included jail time of any length with D'Souza. But Epstein gets the same thing, but for 13 months, if I'm not mistaken, for heinous crimes, which just again, it's appalling at how the scales of justice just swing wherever the hell they want.
Well, let me separate some things for you here, because you can throw all kinds of violations of law into a case. And that's what you call equal application of the law. The reason that you have a lawyer is to make a deal. And that happens all the time. If somebody gives up something, you get a reduced sentence. If you decide you're going to cooperate on this, you get a reduced sentence. So sentencing will never be equal, ever. It'll never happen. But applying the law is where it should be equal. So there are two distinct lanes there.
Okay. I still say D'Souza got railroad. This guy gets a sweetheart deal. And
well, I can't dispute that.
I don't find anything just about that. But this isn't about Dinesh D'Souza. So let me walk away from that analogy. But I do find it sickening that I'm able to even use that analogy.
Well, again, there's never going to be any kind of equality when it comes to sentencing. But let's throw Bill Clinton into the mix here, because as we were coming to air, if you will, Bill Clinton or somebody in the Bill Clinton realm issued a statement. And the statement goes, Bill Clinton knows nothing about the terrible crimes, quote unquote, linked to Jeffrey Epstein, the former president's spokesperson. So he didn't actually do it. The spokesperson said Monday in Clinton's first statement after the new sex trafficking charges were lobbied against the wealthy financier. An indictment alleging sex trafficking and sex trafficking conspiracy was unsealed Monday morning against Epstein, the wealthy, blah, 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 blah. Now, it goes on to say that Clinton had never been on a plane going to Orgy Island or whatever, St. something Island. Okay? We know that to be false. He's been on Epstein's plane it's St. James Island, many times. The statement goes on to say in 2002-2003, President Clinton took a total of 4 trips on Jeffrey Epstein's airplane, 1 to Europe, 1 to Asia, 2 to Africa, which included stops in connection with the work of the Clinton Foundation, the statement said. Continuing, staff, supporters in the foundation, and a Secret Service detail traveled on every leg of the trip. He had 1 meeting with Epstein in his Harlem office in 2002, and around the same time made a brief visit to Epstein's New York apartment with a staff member and his security detail. He has not spoken to Epstein well over a decade and has never been to Little St. James Island, Epstein's ranch in New Mexico, or his residence in Florida. End quote. Now, that's just categorically false.
Okay.
It's absolutely categorically false. I guess it was about 5 years ago. It could have been actually longer than that. I have only the published, and I use that word carefully, only the published manifest, the travel logs. Going through those travel logs that 5 or 6 years ago, whatever it was, you can tell that they're incomplete, because a manifest, if you will, or a travel log has to be filed on every aircraft that takes off, every single one, regardless of where it goes. And
Correct.
It has to be signed off on by somebody in authority with that particular transport. And then it becomes part of the record for the FAA. Now, those travel logs include the names of pilots, every time that the people were getting on the plane, what happened. I mean, it's kind of like the Carfax of airplanes, if you will. This
Right.
had engine trouble, this had a bad this did this, and the engine wouldn't start, all those kinds of, it's like a Carfax. But it also tells who's in it. Well, Don, 80% of each entry just had initials of who was on the flight. Some actually just had the first name. Some had the full name. And it's really quite fascinating who were on these planes. One plane had 53 people on it. 53. Now, Clinton is in there. One of the trips, there were 6 Secret Service. Other trips, there were no Secret Service. So Clinton can't say that Secret Service is with him every single time. That's just false. But there are some very fascinating names in there. And one, as I reread the travel logs last night or over the weekend, whenever it was Doug Band. Now, Doug Band, I think at one point was the CEO for the Clinton Foundation.
Right.
Okay. He'd made several trips. Alan Dershowitz.
How many times did you see Clinton's name on those?
I didn't count them all. It didn't. I think I may have 5 or 6 years ago and kind of took notes in a spiral notebook, but that's like 600 spiral notebooks ago. So I didn't go back and dig them back out again. But it is alleged that Clinton was on an Epstein plane going somewhere at least 26 times.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Now,
well, I would say that without a doubt that they're going to have witnesses that are going to place Clinton.
Well, here's the thing. 5 or 6 years ago at the same time, I also read, because they were out there in open source, I read probably 30 or 40 of the FBI interviews with some of these girls, page after page after page. And I finally said, I can't keep reading this. I almost feel sorry for the FBI agents, having to ask certain questions and getting some of these answers. I just couldn't read them anymore. Right. So those FBI files are sitting out there somewhere. So that's part of evidence. I guarantee you they're being dusted, or if they've already been dusted off and they've been resurrected.
Did you ever see Clinton's name in any of those FBI files?
I don't remember. I really just, I've crossed the Rubicon many times since I read those files.
Right. I got you.
Now, so yesterday, just for giggles, I decided to go through Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book, which was between 2002 and 2005, which was also entered into apparently evidence as we worked their way through this first plea deal. And there's some fascinating names in there. And that doesn't mean that his Black Book had all those people listed in the Black Book as passengers on his airplanes. He may have. But the common thread was, these are people of high prominence and exceptionally wealthy. Exceptionally wealthy. So I was 3/4 of the way through, again, reminding myself of where I was many years ago, and I didn't see Trump's name. Several years ago, I wasn't looking for Trump's name. Yesterday, I was looking for Trump's name. I got 3/4 of the way through, and his name wasn't listed there. And then all of a sudden, I kind of scrolled up somewhere. Oh, it is there. But this goes back to 2002 and to 2005. But Ivana Trump, his first wife, and Ivanka Trump was in there. Several of the Kennedys, Prince Andrew of Monaco, Naomi Campbell, Kevin Spacey. I mean, I can go on and on and on and on and on. I mean, there are some fascinating names in there. But these were all in his Black Book. But I also have to tell you, wherever he went in the world, he had quite the list of masseuses, massage parlors. He had quite the list of commercial airlines and his, frequent flyer numbers. And I mean, so this guy was like always on the move. Always, always, always. So are we going to try and implicate Trump in any way? Sure, the left is going to try to do some of that. But I think when this thing begins to shake out a little bit, they're going to find that this really doesn't have anything to do with Trump, except the fact that he has Alexander Acosta as his labor secretary. However, I will remind you that, again, this plea deal that Acosta did was a state charge. Any other state can bring charges, for instance, New York, for instance, New Mexico. And this plea deal may be vacated because it's in violation of the Victims' Crimes Rights Act or whatever it is. So,
right, let me ask you a quick question because we've only got a couple of minutes before we have to go to break. Is this all being handled under the auspices of the Department of Justice?
No, Southern District of New York.
I understand that, but these are state charges that are
Federal.
being brought against him?
Federal.
Okay, well, all right, that's why I'm asking, is the DOJ involved in this at all?
The Southern District of New York is part of the DOJ.
Okay, so Barr has his hands on this.
He can't.
Why?
He had to recuse himself officially.
Oh, his name's was he on the plane?
No, he happened to work at the time, and we don't know which law firm it was because Jeffrey Epstein may have had more than one law firm, but at the time, he worked for one of the law firms that represented Epstein, so he had to recuse himself.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a minor detail that I'm sure Jerry Nadler will have a field day with. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to take a break here in a minute. Before we do, I want to remind all of you to go to Denise's website, founderscode.com. That's founders with an S, code, CODE.com. The beautiful thing about her website is she does all the work for you. She vets everything. She doesn't post anything that she's speculating on. And I guess in the very rare occasion that she would speculate, she is telling you that. But I have yet to see a single post where she speculated. Everything that she puts up there is fact.
I kind of did today.
Oh, so, all right, well, I haven't read your articles from today. All right, so at any rate, founderscode.com, ladies and gentlemen. Put your email address in the little box, click submit. She's not going to sell your email to anybody, but you will get her post sent right to your inbox every time she creates one. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Drive Time SITREP with Denise Simon. My name is Don Neuen. We're on Mojo 50, and we're going to be right back.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
gentlemen, welcome back to the Drive Time SITREP with Denise Simon. My name is Don Neuen. Let me tell you what happened while we were at commercial break. So during the last segment, I get a phone call from my dad. He's 85 years old. He lives up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And earlier today, he got admitted to the ER for chest pains. So with 9 minutes left in this segment that we just got done with, I get a phone call from my dad. Well, I hit him with with a text message basically that said, "I'm on a phone call, I'll call you back." But I got to tell you, Denise, the last 9 minutes of that segment were the longest 9 minutes of my life.
Sorry.
My
but
dad,
he is fine. He is fine.
He is fine.
Yay.
All good. As a matter of fact, he said, "I'm not staying overnight. I want to go home so I can sleep in my own bed with my wife and eat dinner in my house." And they made him sign some AMA form, which is evidently against medical advisement form. And that from this point forth in his records, they show that he's an unruly patient that doesn't want to follow complete instruction. But the doctor did come in and say, "Hey, look, all we're going to do is bring you back tomorrow for a few more tests. Go home and enjoy sleeping in your own bed with
Sounds
your
like
wife."
me. That's exactly the way I treat.
It's exactly what I thought when he said that. Is you're like the truly patient I ever heard of. You.
I'm the worst.
Simon.
I'm the worst.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, my dad's okay.
Yay!
85 years old, still kicking it. He just worked too hard out in the yard over the 4th of July holiday, and then he bought a boat, so he spent too much time captaining the minnow out there on Lake Winnebago up there in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So I guess he just overdid it, and his heart said, hey, back it down a little, Neuen. So, but he is okay. So before we went to break, we were talking about Epstein and all the names that are attached, the Black Book, the manifests. Where do we pick up now?
Well, this will be kind of interesting because in the press conference today with the Southern District of New York, they actually put out an 800 number, a toll-free number, literally a public cry. If you are a victim, if you had any interactions in this cases, you need to call us. So he also said the AG at the Southern District of New York also said that Epstein was paying these girls extra money to recruit more girls. So are we talking about 60 girls, or at some point are we talking about 1,000? We have no idea. We have no idea.
Sounds like he had his own feeder program set up.
He did. He had a network. Virtually had a network.
Well, let's recap a couple of things in case we've got, some folks that are joining the show late. First of all, let's put everybody's mind at ease right now in that you at least believe, and you've convinced me, that this is not a political hit on Trump. It'll be spun that way, but you can't find anything that Trump needs to necessarily worry about. Secondly, the prosecutor from the Southern District of New York was actually suggested by Sessions, and he has been approved or appointed by Trump. Am I correct?
Correct.
All right. So
he is a registered Republican.
Yeah, we don't necessarily have an adversary that is spearheading this whole thing as the lead prosecutor in this, right?
I don't think so. I can't find it. I was very sensitive to all of this as I'd been watching, because I wrote about it again, as you mentioned, on July the 3rd, because Alan Dershowitz, there are apparently 2,000 pages that have been under seal as part of evidence. And again, this thing had been building for quite some time, going even back to last year and year before, when the Miami Herald had some journalists just digging on this thing relentlessly. But there were 2,000 pages that had been sequestered. The judge ruled last week that those documents are to be released. And the reason I mention Alan Dershowitz is because he wrote a briefing that he did not want those documents to be released because of the names apparently that are in it. And again, that kind of goes to where we are a little bit with the Mueller report, meaning you don't list people's names if they are in there just by some kind of innocent association or any kind of association and haven't been charged. You see what I'm saying? You don't just start. Right. So that was Dershowitz's argument. Well, they lost because the judge ruled that those documents are to be released. And on the heels of those being released, I think they got released to the judge and whoever else. But this arrest of Epstein returning from Paris on his private plane to Teterboro Airport did not surprise me in the least. Simultaneously, however, the FBI broke into his home, his 21,000 square foot home in New York City, and with a search warrant, and apparently in a safe, which they broke into that too, there were thousands and thousands of files of pornographic photos and missives. So the longer part of this story is this cat didn't learn to say anything. He continued to do what he was doing. So he had a bond hearing today. He pled not guilty. They are going to apparently keep him because they do believe he is a flight risk, given his wealth and given his 2 airplanes. So we don't know that.
I'm surprised that, given what the Miami Herald's been doing, that he was not already gone.
I kind of am too. Because I'm looking that, the New York Times wrote something in March and something last year and this and that. And then the Miami Herald actually did a full documentary that I watched, and it was, I was blown away by it. I watched that last year. So he knew this was coming. So apparently when he was arrested without any kind of resistance. He went very peacefully. But whatever sentence he gets, and he'll get one, it'll be for the rest of his life because he's not young.
Right. What does this mean for high-profile individuals that we've talked about now for quite some time, not of recent, but with the Democrat Party, like Podesta, like the Clintons?
I can't really explain all of that, but there will be some names. Even Pelosi's daughter came out and she said that she was afraid that this was going to implicate or involve some of our faves, meaning some of the favorites of the Democrats. So the Democrats need to be maybe running for the hills or staying away from press as best they can. It would be a long slog to compare his black book with the released travel log / passenger manifest. Again, I believe in my heart of hearts that those manifests are not complete. But to compare them would be an interesting little bit of work to do. I'm not going to do it. But there are some fascinating people that were in his black book. Not to say that, some did make that trip or trips on his planes wherever they went, and others did not. But he knew he had access to some pretty amazing people, for sure.
Are any of the people that were listed on those manifests people that would be considered enemies of the United States?
Not that comes to mind. I might have to go back and reread the manifests again for the third time. But the other thing that hurts is I know, one, that they're not complete, and two, a lot of them are just by their initials or their first name. So I can't tell who they.
Now, you brought that up in the first segment. Is
right.
that legal to have a manifest?
And that's why I say. That's why I say my knee-jerk reaction is no. Well, I mean, what good is a manifest if you just have Doug on there? Doug who?
Yeah.
What good is a manifest if you have, the initials PJ? I mean, what is that?
Right.
So I would also be challenging the FAA. Like, shame on you, FAA.
Yeah, different rules for different folks.
Well, and that's the thing. We little people can sit out here in the world and kind of look back and look back at Washington, D.C. and government agencies and lawyers and law firms and sweetheart deals and people and money and power, and we don't stand a chance. We just don't stand a chance.
Yeah, you're right. You brought up this I think his name's Doug Band, who was the head of the Clinton Foundation. I did see that name a couple of times in articles this past weekend. Any reason we're seeing so much of his name?
Because he made the trip several times. At least 3 that I remember seeing.
I'd say that there's probably going to be a lot of pissed off wives. What do you think?
Yeah. I guess that kind of goes without saying. This cat's got people like Mick Jagger, Kevin Spacey, Lauren Hutton. Just some fascinating. He's got John Huntsman, not Abby Huntsman's father, but the other very wealthy guy that had the Huntsman Hospital out there in Utah. He's got Ted Kennedy Jr., Bobby and Mary Kennedy, Senator Edward Kennedy, Ethel Kennedy, Joe Kennedy. So this tells you that he was very well connected. He could have put, and I have a lot of these, the actual phone numbers are blacked out except for the area codes, but there are other contacts, like their press people or whatnot in here. So, he knew the firewalls and, the gateways that he had to get through, and he probably had all these people in his realm because of his hedge fund.
Right. Let me ask you this. We hear a lot about the young women that were involved in this. Is there any indication that he also had young boys involved in this as well? No, not that I've seen. Only women.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yep. Itzhak Perlman. There's another one. How about that one?
Those classical musicians.
Yeah.
All right, so listen, we got about, 13 minutes left here before the end of the show. What else has been going on this weekend that we need to talk about, other than Epstein's Lolita Express to Orgy Island?
Well, that's a big one, because that's going to be sucking the air out of the atmosphere for quite a while here. So
I agree.
Just keep that one happening.
All right, well, let me ask you this. How'd you like Trump's 4th of July Independence Day celebration?
Well, it worked for me.
Worked for me, too. I thought it was fantastic. And I was very, very proud of him for maintaining a patriotic position and not really turning it into a rally. I had hoped that he wouldn't do that, because clearly if he did it, he would have opened himself up to all kinds of, criticism by the left. And I thought that it was a very neutral, patriotic, America-loving celebration that paid awesome tribute to our fine military. And the left, when they did make little smart comments, looked foolish because of that.
Well, here's something that a lot of people don't necessarily understand. Because we have changed up the syllabus when it comes to public education and in secondary education, meaning the college level, there's an awful lot of we don't like America inferences going on in education. So it
Correct.
was really time that a lot of people heard let's be loyal and let's be good patriots words. And so that was a good thing. But when it comes to the military, this part is actually pretty interesting, and I don't think a lot of people necessarily understand it either, because his tributes to the military, while there was some cost involved in, freight training tanks up there and having, the B bombers and, flyovers and whatnot, the military still today struggles meeting their recruitment goals.
Right.
I think all of the services are pretty well meeting them except for Army. So if any young bucks, male or female, were watching any of this, if for nothing else, it may have given a shot in the arm for recruitment, something that the military can't really pay for. So I'm hoping they will get a boost out of that.
Well, if Trump was accurate in his comment, that did in fact take place. There was a pop, which is a great thing.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. There was something else I wanted to ask you about that was taking place last week. I'm drawing a blank, so if I think about it,
all right. Well,
let's
talk about deportation, shall we?
Sure. Why not?
I decided to poke around today, and apparently ICE has been given the authorization to resume deportations. And we keep hearing the amount as being somewhere around 1 million. And of course, when media won't tell you who that 1 million is. So I spent a good bit of time trying to figure out who that 1 million might be. And here's a fascinating thing that I have found. Given the procedures of illegals, ICE, and if there's a case where the judge has said, okay, we've heard your case, we're ordering you to be deported. That doesn't mean they get on a plane that afternoon and they're headed to, wherever. It doesn't work that way. The very first thing is the order goes to ICE. ICE sends out a letter and says, hey, we suggest a voluntary departure. And the voluntary departure means that you can go at your own expense wherever you want to go, but you have to do it within this scheduled time frame. It might be 60 or 90 days. So therefore, ICE does not have to perform the deportation. But if they do have to perform the deportation, any reentry is automatically a felony. If in the court hearings or there is an appeal and there is a no-show of that deportee, that is an automatic order for removal, and any bail paid by anybody is non-refundable. When a judge orders the deportation, ICE will arrange for the travel documents and the transportation. The deportee gets enough time, by the way, this is how generous we are, to get their affairs in order. They get a letter called, interestingly enough, it's called bag and baggage, otherwise known as Form I-166. Why it's called bag and baggage, I don't know. But the letter tells the deportee where and when to report for removal and how much baggage they can take back with them. Now, if the deportee, for whatever reason, cannot travel within that time limit, and there are extenuating circumstances, they have to file what is called a stay and give the reasons for such circumstances. And we grant that almost every single time, but the clock starts ticking again once those circumstances are cleared. If the bag and baggage letter is ignored and the full case is then referred to what is called the fugitive unit. The million that Donald Trump and ICE are talking about doing these deportations on immediately are these fugitives. Not these raids. We're not doing raids. We're doing the fugitive list. That's important. And the media won't tell you that. And all of these immigration organizations out there won't tell you that either. Now, ICE maintains a fairly sizable database of criminal illegal fugitives, and the crimes range from murder to rape to weapons trafficking, narcotics, underage pornography, and robbery. And I mean, it goes on and on and on. So the cases that are inside the fugitive unit will be prioritized. So in other words, underage pornography may go to kind of the bottom of the list of the 1 million, but the murders and the rapes and the other things will come to the top. And it's important to understand because just last month, the Miami office of ICE's Homeland Security Investigations Unit made 25 arrests on 53 search warrants. And they were executed as far-reaching as 3 countries. Well, we seized 5,300 firearms and components, 167 explosives, and 15 silencers. So those things really need to be said. Now, these weapons were going from, interestingly enough, from the U.S. to Argentina and Brazil. Isn't that interesting? So I really wanted to put that out there on who the 1 million may be. But having said all that, because this restart, if you will, because remember Trump at the G20 said he was going to suspend it for a couple of weeks, waiting for Congress to kind of get their act together. Well, we have at least 2 organizations. One is called RACES, that's RAICES, and the other is called FIRE, FIRE. Now, RACES stands for Refugee and Immigrant Center for Education and Legal Services, and FIRE stands for, whatever it stands for. Well, they are using now these apps. An app actually for FIRE says, when you see ICE, call FIRE. The number is 469-778-4979. And they will tell you how to hide, where to go, what to do. But here's the thing.
And
so
how
these,
is this legal?
Well, that's it. Especially when you've got some major fugitives here.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
Unbelievable. Oh, I do. Listen, I don't want to cut you off on that. We got 4 minutes left, and I remembered what I wanted to ask you. Last week we had a pretty horrific situation regarding Antifa. Are we any steps closer?
No.
Really? Why not? Well, let me finish that for the sake of our audience.
That's a rhetorical why not, isn't it?
Yeah. Are we any closer to Antifa or the funding sources for Antifa being labeled some type of a terrorist organization?
No.
And why not?
A rhetorical why not?
Exactly. All right. Well, that's highly discouraging to end the show with.
Well, here's the thing. After we had the Antifa thing going on in Portland, we had an Antifa encounter under a free speech rally, kind of whatever the heck that was, in Washington, D.C. And that Antifa group, Washington, D.C., had a signed permit. Nobody thought, I don't know who gives it. I don't know if it's the D.C. police or whoever gives it, Capitol Police, I don't know. But wouldn't somebody go, wait, let's look at the calendar. Oh, we've got an application here that we approved for Antifa to have. Wouldn't you think they'd have pulled it?
You would think.
Okay, so, there you go. There's government.
I would think they would be already labeled as a domestic terrorist organization.
Okay, well, we sit out here, we look back at Washington, D.C., and we wonder why things are broken. Nobody thinks.
We don't. We don't wonder why they're broken. We know why they're broken. We're just sick and tired of them being broken.
No argument from me.
I know.
I just sit here with my arms folded sometimes, and I just look at headlines, or I look at the the news feeds going across, screens here in front of me, all these screens, and I just go, I can't even believe this stuff, and then to top it all off, here comes Bill Clinton that goes, I haven't spoken to Jeffrey Epstein and I've never been to St. James Lolita Express, blah, blah, blah. Give me a break.
You've got the proof that he has.
Yes, everybody's got the proof. It's just not Denise. Everybody's got this proof. It's been floating around there for 5 or 6 years at a minimum. Wow.
Yeah. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, when I first called Denise tonight, before we actually started recording the show, she was in rare form. I mean, she was in a pissy mood. Denise, I think you've done a pretty good job of not really coming off as pissy as you sounded before we hit the record button. And I thank you, and I would say so to our listeners. All right, you got 1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute
to close things out with.
So
what do you want to say?
All the illegals are very upset now because the taxpayer spends at least $210 million a year doing subsidized housing for these illegals, and inside these homes are maybe legitimate families that are harboring illegals. And now these families and these illegals are upset because HUD, by the end of the year, will probably make that a policy that they are pulling the HUD subsidies. All right?
Oh, that's
right.
terrible, Denise. Oh.
Or they may be evicted.
Oh. Tell me it isn't true.
Could it be we could actually do something right? Why are we waiting until the end of the year?
Exactly. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Drive Time SITREP with the stellar Denise Simon, and I'm your good buddy, Don Neuen. Check out Denise's show Thursday night on Mojo 50, The Denise Simon Experience. Do me a favor, Tuesday night on Mojo 50, which you can find by going to mojo50.com or iHeartRadio. We're all over the place, Spreaker. And check out Cowboy Logic Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. We do this for you. We'll never waste your time. That I can promise you. Denise, take us home.
Thanks for listening. God bless America.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.